You ready?
I'm good.
All right. I think everybody is where they need to be. How much time things got out, so. Hopefully I talk loud enough, but this is on, so can everybody hear me? Okay?
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like it's on.
It is if I go like this and I talk really close, which would be uncomfortable.
Right. Well, just point it more towards your,
Now try this.
All right.
it's too low, Dana. Maybe point it up a little bit more towards your mouth. There you go.
How's that?
That's perfect.
All right. So, my name's Danielle Grote, for those of you who don't know me, member here at Zion. And this week and next week, we're going to talk a little bit about our health and our mind and that mind, body, and connection. And so, for most of you, I think were here when I did the EFT back in October and we did the tapping. Yeah, you're familiar with it? So I was hoping that was the case. We're going to just talk a little bit more in detail because I said it's can get pretty deep and it can get to be a very powerful tool, and to try to teach it in 40 minutes was really difficult to do, so we're going to kind of take it to that next step now and teach from there. As you all know, I am not a trained psychologist. I am not a medical professional. I don't diagnose. I don't counsel people. But what I do is I've been trained in the tapping and EFT. And so I have my own business where I help people with stress and anxiety, with fears, phobias, chronic pain, those kind of things. And so if it becomes something that's more challenging, more traumatic, then I have people that I would refer them to go into more deeper counseling. So if for some reason something comes up with somebody today as we're doing a tapping, but I leave it really generic when I teach classes like this, that you would maybe want to go and see a mental health professional if something does get triggered today. I teach this class at the high school. I just did it this past week. I do it right before finals to teach the kids about test anxiety and how to help control their minds and the panicking that they have over that. So that's always a lot of fun. But today I want to go more into detail about our mind specifically and the 4 important things that you need to know about your mind. So we're going to go through these 4 things and then talk about them in detail. Then I have a video clip. Have any of you seen the movie Heal yet, the documentary?
No.
So it's a wonderful documentary. If you have a chance, watch it. It was at the Michigan Theater a year ago, and now it's on Netflix, and it's the most watched documentary on Netflix. It's really great. So
Heal?
Heal, yeah,
On
H-E-A-L,
Netflix.
on Netflix.
Okay. Does anyone have a pen?
There was so much stuff I wanted to show in it, but in such a short period of time, I just picked a little clip just to give you a taste of it all. But so you know, your mind will do exactly, specifically what you tell it to do. So if you have behaviors, habits, addictions, things that you don't like, well, then tell your mind different things. It sounds, you know, like it could be, you know, how do you get over an addiction? It's the same with smoking, right? There's some people who, they've been smoking for years, they just make up their mind and they're done, that's it. They told their mind something different, and there's that connection there that plays really strongly. We'll go into a little bit more detail. Also, your mind is hardwired to move you towards pleasure and away from pain. That's how we survive on this planet. We all back off and kind of cringe from something that's painful. And that's our body and our mind protecting itself. The way that you feel about things comes down to 2 very simple things. The pictures that you create in your mind and the words that you tell yourself. And we're going to actually do a demonstration of that too. And then lastly, your mind loves what's familiar. So it is programmed to go over and over and over again. So that's how you get stuck in these habits. That's sometimes how you form good habits, right? Like getting up and working out, and why they tell you if you do something for 21 days, it will stick because you've made it familiar. But if you have things that you don't like, you just need to make them unfamiliar. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail too. So to start with, your mind being hardwired to move you towards pleasure and away from pain. So if you link pain with things like the dentist, going to the doctor, if you don't like speaking in public, well, your mind and your brain is going to do whatever it can to help you avoid those things. So it's probably been somewhere in your life where you've had something that you've planned and you've tried to prepare for, and you're looking forward to it, but you're really nervous about it, or maybe you're not looking forward to it, and the day comes and you wake up and you got that ick in your throat, right? Or you've got that really bad headache and you're like, oh, today of all days, really? Why do I have to have that? Well, it's because you've told your body, your truth to your mind is you don't want to do this. And it's protecting you. It's like, I'll give you a headache, I'll give you a sore throat. I love you. I don't want you to have to suffer. And that's what it does. So you have to tell it something different. How many of you had food poisoning? It's something. I have. I've had shrimp, and I don't eat much shrimp anymore. I also have had where, when I was younger, I spilled a bottle of perfume in my bedroom. It fell off my dresser, it broke. I smelled that perfume forever. To this day, if I still smell it, I just cringe, right? It's my familiar. It became way too familiar for me, and it just makes me cringe. That one I haven't figured out how to get rid of yet. I haven't collaborated well enough to do that. So, in its most simplicity, you can choose every day what is pain and what is pleasure. You actually have a choice in this. You don't have to suffer through things. You don't have to make things painful. And you don't have to actually truly believe it, but you just keep telling yourself that. It's sort of like when you pray. We talk about, you don't beg to God for something, right? What if instead you just thank Him? You already thank Him for it being done. So instead of, oh, please help, so my child listen to me better. They just don't behave. Instead, pray and say, thank you, God. Thank you for helping my child to listen better. Thank you for helping me be a better parent. And being grateful for things and having that gratitude changes your mindset into a positive thinking. And your mind is like, oh, they're already better. They're already doing something different. And that starts to become the familiar. And you actually look at their behaviors in a different way. You'll look at their behaviors not so annoying, not like nails on a chalkboard. You maybe can see it that, oh, they're just learning, oh, they're just growing. And you'll start to change your behaviors, which again, it continues. And then they start to behave better because you're not just jumping on them. You're not being triggered by things that they're doing. And that can happen to a lot of different things along the way of whether it's your child or something else that you're working on. So your mind does exactly, specifically, what it thinks you want it to do. So your mind works out what it's doing by the way that the words that you're using. So if you sit there and you say, oh, and you're talking with your friends, my body is just falling apart, right? Or I can't remember anything. I'm sorry, I'm going to probably ask you your name in 5 minutes because I'm not going to remember your name. What did you just tell your mind, right? You've told it that it's not going to remember it, so it's already forgotten that name. Or your body is already hurting and aching. I'm just waiting to get this whatever illness because it runs in the family. Your mind then starts to think for it. It starts to look for this illness. It starts to look for something that's wrong because you're telling it to do that. You're putting those thoughts and those pictures in your mind. So again, you just need to think about these things a little bit differently. Tell yourself different things. So your brain responds to these two things, right? The pictures that you make in your head and the words that you say to yourself. So an example of this is how two people can be doing the exact same activity, but having completely different experiences. For example, we're going on spring break in a couple weeks and we're flying. Larry loves flying. He's used to flying. He flies all the time for business. I don't fly all that much. I'm always worried about, are the kids, happy and good, and are they going to behave and stuff, mostly for my son. He'll get on the plane, headphones on, earbuds on. He's asleep before the plane even takes off. I'm in my seat, I'm looking around, I'm pulling out food, I'm making sure the iPad's out, and I'm listening, oh, those flaps sound kind of weird. Is that the right sound that's happening on the plane? And I'm like kind of a sweaty mess before the plane even takes off. We are both going to the exact same place. We are on the exact same plane. He's asleep and relaxed, and I'm a hot, sweaty mess just praying that this plane ride goes okay. The exact same activity, two very different experiences. Why? Because I have a different vocabulary going on in my head. I have different pictures in my head. I also have different experiences that I'm playing off of that are in my head. Larry travels all the time for business. He's in first class. Nobody bothers him, right? The only time I've been on a plane is with screaming kids or with something going on. That's all I know. So that's all I expect. He expects something different. If something else happens, that's not familiar. That's his unfamiliar to him.
So all those things you tend to worry about did I think of this, did I think that, you just then say, it makes no difference whether I remembered it or didn't remember it, or
it's just telling
the kids scream or not.
It's just telling your brain to look at it, differently. That, what if this plane ride goes well? It's possible, right? What if I actually packed just the right amount of
You
food?
restate your expectations.
Yeah, and look at it from a different perspective of everything can go right, and maybe one or two of these things will go wrong. It's just how you tell yourself something. So an example of this mind-body connection would be, is if everybody could stand up for a second. We did something similar to this last time, but if you just put your arm out in front of you, and then just see how far back you can kind of reach, and make a mental note in your head of where it goes. And then you put your arm back down. But close your eyes and don't do it, and visualize your arm going back 25, 50% further than what it did just now. And then when you're done, open your eyes again. And now take your arm and go back and see, did all of you go at least a little bit further?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Because you visualized it, right? You can all sit back down. Michael Phelps, the famous swimmer, he won, right, all of these Olympic gold medals. And he was asked, what makes you different than everybody else? And he said, I never saw myself as anything other than a gold medalist. He visualized himself on that podium with those medals. He visualized himself being the fastest person. There is science behind the importance of visualization. And you just saw it to yourself. And that was 2 seconds, right? You closed your eyes and just saw your arm moving back. What if you visualized yourself accomplishing something awesome, something amazing, doing something different? Maybe you visualize your back not hurting, or something, an illness going away. You have the power to do that, and your body will respond to it. There is a connection between what your thoughts are and a physical manifestation of pain or health. So, with that said, I want to show you, sorry, there's one more thing about your mind loving the familiar, and then sticking with that familiar, and then we'll go to that movie clip. If what's familiar to you and, procrastinating or complaining about your back pain, that's my father-in-law is his knee of, I've never had a conversation where somehow bone on bone doesn't come up. I don't know how you can fit that into any conversation, but it does. And, you sometimes speak poorly of yourself, I think, right? We will sometimes just say something. I played tennis with this woman. She's amazing. She's 84 and she kicks my butt still to this day. But she yells at herself. She's like, you dumb broad, every time she messes something up.
Well, I can relate to that.
And she really, though, it messes up her game. And then she starts playing worse and worse because she's calling herself a dumb broad. And then it makes me really uncomfortable. So then I change my game because I don't want her to feel that way. And so we end up not really having a good tennis game over it because of the words that she's choosing to use and the pictures that she's putting in her head. And so, again, if we just need to start making some of these familiar habits unfamiliar. Stop doing some of these things and telling ourselves something different. So this is a clip here I want to show you of the movie. Like I said, it's a really great documentary, so if you get a chance, please watch the whole thing. It's about 5 minutes.
Over the last, decade or even more so, the amount of research that's come out in the scientific journals showing without any shadow of a doubt that there is such a thing as a mind-body connection. I mean, thinking, believing, emotions all cause really substantial chemical and physiological, biological changes all throughout the body. And I love that that's how much of a transition we've made in the last decade or two. From woo-woo stuff about the mind-body connection to hard, factual scientific evidence. I have a PhD in organic chemistry. Now, it's nothing at all to do with organic foods. And organic chemists basically play the child's Lego game, but we do it with atoms. So people like me end up in the pharmaceutical industry. So I work for one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, developing drugs for cardiovascular disease and for cancer. And although I loved doing what I was doing, I loved the science of it, but what fascinated me more so, I would say, was what happens when you test the drugs. So let's say in a typical trial, you might give 100 people a drug to show that it works. So you've also got to give 100 people a placebo for comparison purposes. And you might get, say, 75 people improving on a drug. But it's not uncommon to get 40, 50, 60, 70, 74, 75, sometimes even also improving on the placebo because they think they're getting a drug. And I thought, oh, it's amazing. What we see here is belief in self-shift biology. And I don't think that's taught enough in medical schools.
So how is it that you can give someone a sugar pill, a saline injection, or perform some false surgery or treatment, and a certain percentage of those people will accept, believe, and surrender to the thought that they're getting the actual substance or treatment, and they begin to program their autonomic nervous system to make their own pharmacy of chemicals that matches the exact same chemical they think they're taking. So the question is it the inert substance that's doing the healing, or is it the body's innate capacity to heal?
Well, everyone seems to be aware of the placebo effect, the result of positive thinking. The important question is this: what is the consequence of negative thinking? Guess what? It's
It's,
Where is the connection?
here he is.
opposite direction. While a placebo, positive thinking, can cure you of anything, a nocebo, negative belief, can actually cause any illness and can cause death just because you believe that.
Should we get to it?
So, turn the lights back on real quick. No, thank you. So, like we said, the 4 important things that you need to know about your mind. And there's that whole documentary is about that connection, and it goes and talks more about in detail of all of these things. It's amazing. The placebo effect is real. People would often think, oh, you're just a hypochondriac then, right? That you don't really have the illness. But more and more science is showing that that's not what the case is. It's that your mind is that powerful that some people can actually think themselves well. And one of the ways that we can do this is through this technique of tapping. And so I wanted to then go into that and to teach you again a little bit more about it so you can make tapping familiar, right? Instead of your unfamiliar as a way of handling stress and some different thoughts that are coming up. What kind of things can you tap on? Well, there's, saying if our beliefs and our thoughts impact our health, then how do we change those beliefs which do not support our highest good? And that's through tapping. So we can tap on things like stress and anxiety, sports performance, cravings, fears, phobias, pain, chronic pain, all of these things. For example, at the high school, when I was there this past week, one of the boys came up to me afterwards, and everybody's kind of afraid to say something in front of people, right? And so he's like, hey, is there truth to that sports performance? Because I play football and I've got a couple different college offers, and I'm not sure, what I should do because I don't think I'm good enough. I don't know why I should do it. What if I fail? And I'm like, well, do you hear those red flags already, right? I mean, he's already made it that far. And so I said, if you want, I have time, we can stay right now and we can tap a little bit. And so we did, and it got deeper than he was prepared for, and I tried to warn him of that. He was insistent that we try, so we went a little bit, but had absolutely nothing to do with football. And it had everything to do with his growing up. And it had everything to do with his dad leaving at the age of 3 and packing up and leaving his house. That he wasn't good enough, right, he wasn't valued enough for his dad to stay home. He was a disappointment.
So he was picking the wrong subject. For example, you may think stress is my most pressing issue, but really it's anger.
Yes. And it's not the wrong thing, it's just layers of things. As I try to explain them, it's this onion that you have to peel things away to get to the root cause, the root issue of these
What do you
things.
start with?
You start with your most pressing issue. So if you look at your paper, on the one side, it talks about how to get started with tapping. And so it's what's coming up right now. So for him, it was football, right? So we just kind of tapped on the idea of what's happening with the football. And, you know, I don't feel good enough. I don't feel qualified enough to go to this school. And he instantly kind of started tearing up when you say certain words, certain triggering type words. And that was that, you know, the feeling the good enough. And so I asked him, like, well, when else in your life have you felt this way, where you've kind of felt like a disappointment? And he pauses and he starts to get teary-eyed and he's like, oh, I see what you're doing. And I'm like, I'm not trying to trick you. This isn't a trick. This is trying to get to the point of what it is that we're doing. And he's like, well, you know, when I was little, my dad, you know, packed his bags and he left. And I'm like, well, how did that make you feel? Like you're feeling right now? And he's like, well, even worse. I'm like, so that's where we need to be. So then we went to that feeling and those emotions. And that started to lead down a whole nother road, which we couldn't do possibly in the school. And so you can tap on just kind of calming down that anxiety. But what it did is it brought into his awareness that the problem wasn't football, that he needed to do some work on himself and some thinking about what is it that he really wants to do with his future now that he's 18 and a senior. And so he was thankful for that he's like, I never paused, I never stopped long enough to even look at that being something. And that was what he went home with those thoughts to kind of go and chew on. So that's some of the things that tapping can do when you do this on your own. If it gets to be too deep, and I told him this and I actually gave him the card, there are therapists out there who then can kind of help you through if there's more issues about, you know, maybe there was trauma in the home, I don't know. It wasn't my place to ask at that point in time for that. So whatever that most pressing issue is what you're going to tap on. And then you're going to give it this scale of intensity. So part of what you learn is just you close your eyes and you feel in your body and you think to yourself whatever that issue is. So for him it was he closed his eyes and he said, you know, I don't feel good enough to play football in college. And what did that make him feel like? Where did he feel it in his body? You know, he said he just kind of felt this yuckiness, this queasiness in his stomach. And then that's where we focused the attention on and gave that a number. And you do that mostly so that you can see if you're progressing. You know, are things getting better? Are they getting worse? Are they shifting or changing? Does the ickiness in your stomach change to a tightness in your chest? Maybe it's anger that comes up. You know, maybe oftentimes at the end of everything when you're tapping, sadness is what comes up. And that's usually where the tears and stuff come, and it's just where you're finally relaxed enough to let go of whatever those emotions are that you've been holding on to for so long. Because what happens is we have these limiting beliefs, these programs that are running in our head that we don't even realize that are in our subconscious. Like your phones, right? How many of you have had your phone where it just isn't working quite as well as it should be, or wondering why is it so slow, or the battery's draining really fast? And you realize in the background, you have all these apps that you've left open, right, that you haven't closed. So you go through and you flick them off, and you've got Maps on. Maps is a huge battery drain, right, because it's looking for where you want to go all the time. Your brain and your mind is the same way. You have programs that are running in the background that you don't realize are running, that have been running since you've been in 5th grade when somebody called you a bad name or said something to you and made you not feel good. Or for his case too, he was rejected off of the football team in 8th grade, and he got a letter that says, sorry, but you didn't make it. He keeps that letter in his wallet, and he carries it with him.
No.
I asked him why, and I said, my guess is you think it's motivating you, right? Because you never want to get a letter like that again. So you're going to push yourself harder. But it's also reminding you of your continual failure. That's that program that's running in the back of his head. So decisions that you make are often the experiences that you've had that go all the way back to being little kids that you don't realize, that are holding you back. Fears that you have are reasons why you're saying no to certain things, because you're afraid to go and do something. Maybe you're afraid to go and travel because something happened one time on a trip, or you ate something bad, or you got sick or something. Those are all playing in the back of your head. Tapping gets to those things. It doesn't change that they happen or not, but it neutralizes them so they're not triggers, so that you can think past them, so that you can turn off those programs. We'll go through a tapping experiment here, a whole thing to show you what it's like. If you look on your other side, you have the points. I'll show you what those points are. And the reason that you're tapping on these specific points are you have these meridian system in your body. It's an energy system. We are all energy beings. That's why, right, we have EKGs and EEGs. All of these things are measuring the energy that's in our body. That's why polygraphs and stuff work. It's all the energy that's in our body. So this plays off of the idea of acupuncture and acupressure, and it's either the beginning or the end of a meridian system, or one of those lines of that energy system that you're tapping on, and it opens up these memories. And it opens it up because your mind doesn't know the difference between an actual threat and a very good visualized threat. So if you have a really good visualization, or still this really strong feeling, one of those emotions where you're like, I feel it like, it was yesterday. Like that perfume that I spilled, that if I smelled it, it brings me right back to my bedroom. That's an unprocessed emotion. And that's what this is looking for, and that's what you're going to be working on. And so when you tap on it, it opens those spaces up, so then you can go in and you can heal them and neutralize them. So you start on this karate chop point of your hand, that's the side with your pinky. This is the only one where at the beginning you only do this once, and you do your setup statement. So it's going to be your most pressing issue. So, for him it was, even though I don't know what to do with football, I accept how I feel and I'm okay. And the reason you're saying it that way is you're saying, even though I have this problem, I accept it and I'm okay. You're not judging the problem. You're not criticizing yourself. You're not awful for feeling this way. It's your current present truth. It is what it is. This isn't about negative feelings. This isn't about, oh, you shouldn't think that way. Because subconsciously, somewhere you do, when you're dealing with something, you are thinking it. So acknowledge it. Don't judge it. Just acknowledge it so that you can work through it. Then you're going to do a reminder phrase, and that's when you tap for these other points. So you have your eyebrow here on the inside. It doesn't matter if you use both hands and tap them both, or if you just use one or the other, but it does matter the order in which we do these things. So you start with this point here, and it's just 2 or 3 fingers gently tapping, and you'll do it about 5 to 7 times as you're saying whatever that statement is. Then you're going to go to the outer side of your eyebrow. Then you go under your eye where that bone is right there. And you go under your nose, under your mouth, and that crease of your chin. And where your collarbone is, if you go just below it where it's a little bit softer, those are called your sore spots, and you'll tap there. And this is also, these 2 spots, if you're really stressed and say you're someplace where it would look kind of odd if you start doing all this tapping, you can just kind of rub them in circles, and even just with one hand. And some people naturally just do that, and it will help to start to just calm you down. And then you go into your armpit. We joke this is the gorilla thumping spot. So right about where a woman's bra strap would be, or like a tank top. And then the top of your head. And those are all of the points. And if you forget a point or something along the way, that's fine. Just next time, the next round that you go through, you'll come back to it. So I wanted to test it out. And I thought that since we are going through some changes at the church that maybe some people aren't very comfortable with, or are uncertain about or unsure of, we'll tap on accepting change. But this also works for any change you have in your life, right? If there's maybe a parent or something that's ill and you have to deal with, or maybe you've recently gotten a diagnosis of something and you need to accept some change. Whatever it is that's going on, I thought this would be a good spot to work on. So what I want you to do is just close your eyes for a minute. We'll teach you how to kind of get in touch with your body and the feelings that you have. And I want you to take a deep breath, just hold it in for a moment, and just feel your body just right now in general, what's going on. physically? Are there any aches or pains? Are you feeling anything, maybe emotionally? Just kind of your base point. And then just say to yourself, I am open to change. And then think about, how does that sentence feel to you? Does it feel false, like you're lying to yourself? Is there a certain issue that comes up that you are thinking about with change? Because if you are, that's what I want you to personally focus on. You can set your own intention here for this tapping. So if there is something you're going through right now that requires you to do some change, you can focus on that. If you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm dealing with change, no problem, that's okay too. When you tap with a group of people, it's called borrowed benefits. It's just like meditating with a group of people. The more energy you have in a space, the more you help each other. So if you can at least just do this and tap through it, you're probably helping your fellow person here. So once you get that feeling and that emotion and you've set that intention for yourself, give it a number of intensity. So a 0 being, yeah, it doesn't bother me, I'm good, I'm just going to tap and help my fellow person. Or this is 10 and this is actually excruciating and this is, I have something really big I need to work through. And then we will go through and start to do a tapping sequence. So everybody can open up their eyes, get out your karate chop point. I'll say it first and then you can follow along and repeat after me. I'll have this is on the screen so you can read it there.
Do we say it out loud or just to ourselves?
It's up to you. You can. It out loud when we're doing it as a group. If there's something individual that you want to work on and think it to yourself, that's fine, so that you don't have to say it. So we'll start with that karate chop point. Even though part of me resists change,
Even though part of me resists change,
I choose to love and accept myself anyway.
I choose to love and accept myself anyway.
Even though part of me resists change,
Even though part of me resists change,
and I miss the old ways,
and I miss the old ways,
I choose to love and honor myself anyway.
I choose to love and honor myself anyway.
And the last one, even though part of me resists change,
Even though part of me resists change,
and part of me needs to stick with tradition and my old ways,
and part of me needs to stick with tradition and my old ways,
I love and accept myself.
I love and accept myself.
So that's going to be the only time that you do the part on your hand, and that sets up the tapping sequence that you're going to go through. Now we're going to go through 6 rounds of it. I'm going to stop partway through to kind of check in, just so you have an idea of how long this is. It takes about 5 minutes to do this. So we go to the eyebrow up here, and we just say, all this resistance to change. Side of the eye. Can I stay present and meet it with love?
Can I stay present and meet it with love?
Under the eye. Can I come into a space of allowing?
Can I come to a space of allowing?
Under the nose. Allowing that much unknown.
Allowing that much unknown.
Under the mouth. Allowing that much fear.
Allowing that much fear.
Your collarbone. And just staying present.
And just staying present.
Under the arm. Part of me is convinced.
Part of me is convinced.
On top of the head. That change is bad and unacceptable.
Change is bad and unacceptable.
We go back to the eyebrow now. The only thing that keeps me safe now,
The only thing that keeps me safe now,
side of the eye, is holding on to those memories.
holding on to those memories,
Under the eye, holding on to traditions.
holding on to traditions,
Under the nose, holding on to the familiar.
holding on to the familiar.
Under the mouth, I refuse to accept these changes.
I refuse to accept these changes.
Collarbone, I refuse to give in.
I refuse to give in.
Under the arm, so much change all around me.
So much change all around me.
Top of the head, perhaps I can slow myself down and meet these deep feelings.
Perhaps I can slow myself down and meet these deep feelings.
Back to the eyebrow. Would I be willing to bring stillness and calm?
Are we willing to bring stillness and calm?
Side of the eye, to just be present to my body.
Just be present to my body.
Under the eye, to just be present to what is.
Just be present to what is.
Under the nose, and be willing to consider these potential changes.
Be willing to consider these potential changes.
Under the mouth, will I be willing to stay present and listen?
Will I be willing to stay present and listen?
Collarbone, It's not so fun. Under the arm. I'm meeting some very hard places.
I'm meeting some very hard places.
Top of the head. This is out of my comfort zone.
This is out of my comfort zone.
Everybody to pause for a minute, take a deep breath, and check in with your body and see what it is that you're feeling. If you were working on something in particular, has it shifted? Has that number changed? Has it gone down? For some of you, maybe it's gone up and you're feeling a little bit more anxious about it as you're thinking about it. Anxiety that comes with this is often because you're not in the present moment, which is why this talks so much about being present. Because anxiety is about worrying about things that are happening in the future. It's about something that you can't control. So if you remind your body, if you make the present familiar, then that can help control and lower that anxiety. That's one of the reasons we say some of the words that we're saying in here. So think about where your numbers shift to, maybe where the feeling in your body has shifted to, and now we're going to go through the last three here, and then we'll kind of check in and see where we're at. Does anybody have any questions?
My sense that I got was going through these two protocols, so to speak, that one was like a pro and one was like a con. One was for or why not, the other was why or why
Right.
not, whichever.
And it's more specific to this one because it's change, right? Because change is there's so many unknowns. So, part of you is like, oh, I could do it. Well, no, I'm not. I refuse to do it. This hurts. This is bad. So again, the best part of tapping works when you use your own words. So when I'm doing things as a group, I have to keep it a little bit more, generic. So you would actually be saying what it is that you're thinking, what's coming up to you about your issue, about whatever it is maybe that you're, changing. But it still comes down to, is there a possibility of how can I accept this? And posing that question to yourself.
So you talked about positive talk, or, telling yourself,
Posing
thinking and
is-
positive things, but yet you are sort of also during this acknowledging like,
I don't like this. And this is
it's
uncomfortable.
not like mindless happy talk, it's like,
Right.
like-
Because it's frustrating when somebody tells you to just get over it.
right.
Well, how do you just get over something, right? So you are still acknowledging your present truth, and that truth is that maybe you do want to change, or maybe you do want to get with the program or make something different, but it's hard. It's really hard, and it hurts, and it's difficult, and there's tears or there's pain. Acknowledge that, and so you mix these two together. So we'll go to the next one here of, back to the eyebrow. Allowing myself to be open. Side of the eye, and really look at what's necessary. Under the eye, but I'm not sure I like it. Under the eye, under the nose. I definitely don't like how this feels. Under the mouth, all this anxiety in my body. Collarbone, there is so much change. Under the arm, hanging on to the familiar. Top of the head, but maybe it's blocking me from all kinds of opportunities. Back to the eyebrow, holding on to so many memories. Side of the eye, I feel like I would be losing a part of myself. Under the eye, what do I really need to hang on to? Under the nose, and what can I begin to let go? Under the mouth, I choose to have more faith in myself. Collarbone, and connect with myself in peace. Under the arm, would I be willing to bring peace to this change? Top of the head, when my mind is telling my body so loudly it's not okay. And then the last one, back to the eyebrow, I can handle this. Side of the eye, I've handled everything else that's happened in my life. Under the eye, maybe not always as gracefully as I would have liked. under the nose. So relaxing into this experience.
Relaxing into this experience.
Under the mouth, knowing that I am safe to make changes.
Knowing that I am safe to make changes.
Collarbone, allowing all of these changes to take place.
Allowing all of these changes to take place.
Under the arm, with ease and joy and grace.
With ease and joy and grace.
On top of the head, as I stay present in this growth and expansion.
As I stay present in this growth and expansion.
And allowing and inviting it into my new life.
Allowing and inviting it into my new life.
And take a deep breath. Let that go, and then just kind of feel in your body and see if anything has changed. Did anybody work on something in particular? Does this resonate with someone? Yeah, anybody want to share anything, or did anything shift for you?
I think insight is the right word. I felt a little insight into the topic.
So, no matter what the issue is, you go through and you can tap on whatever it is that you're feeling. And once you feel sort of that shift come, where you take that deep breath and you really can feel your shoulders drop a little bit, and you're just like, all right, I think I can move through this. I'm at this comfortable place where I'm with this. Then you can go through and tap on a part of the positive, and do one of those phrases just to kind of calm things down. But you have to empty out all of those negative feelings. You have to acknowledge those in order for that positive. There's no room for the positive until you get rid of it. Just a second. There's Louise Hay, who owns Hay House Publishing. I don't know if any of you've heard of that. It's one of the biggest self-help publishing companies. She was 60 when she started this company. And her statement is, because people would ask her, how can you, because she loved tapping. She was a huge fan of tapping. How is it that you can tell people to focus on the negative? You're such a positive person. Your whole publishing company is all about positive and self-help. She says, she's an older woman, honey, I tell you, you can't clean your house if you don't see the dirt. So you need to see the dirt. You need to talk about these things and bring it up. And this is great to help with your kids and help them to see their dirt and their issues and their, the stress backpack. Because all of these things that happen to you all day long, you put it on you, and I'll deal with that later or something, and then I'll deal with this later, and then you put it in, and before you know it, your backpack, you're like this, and you can't carry it anymore, and then somebody says something that isn't really a big deal, and poof, you explode, and you argue, and you fight, and you say something that you wish you wouldn't have said. So tapping doesn't always have to be on a big thing. You can just go to bed at night and just tap on, that colleague at work, that comment they made, really was upsetting to me. They judged me on something, I didn't like that. And you just go through it once or twice, it takes 2 minutes, and you've put that to rest, you've processed that. So the next morning you're not waking up and you're oh, I don't want to go to work, I got to see that person again, I got to deal with that look, that feeling, that judgment. You won't feel that way.
So on January 31st, the company that my husband and I both worked for went out of business. He's 60, I'm going to be 59 this year. And connecting this to a story in the Bible made me think of something. So I feel like God sometimes works best when there's nothing good happening. And it made me think about the manna, the story about the manna coming from the sky, pay attention when there's nothing. It's sometimes you can see more clearly. When things get taken away, you can see more clearly.
Oh, yeah, and clearing all of this stuff, away so that you can hear what the good is, so that you can it's turning off those programs, right, that are running in your head, the things that you told yourself, because tapping on forgiveness is a huge thing. That God forgave us. But we don't forgive ourselves. We don't have to. We pray, we ask for forgiveness. We're forgiven. We're not asked to do all of these different things and jump through all of these hoops. He's just done. but we're like, oh no, I gotta beat myself up over this. I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I have to make things right. Well, you don't, but you feel that way, so tap through that and clear all of that stuff out so that you can have a clearer mind to do these amazing things that you've been made to do, that you've been built for, right? I mean, this is actually one of the most uplifting, empowering tools that you can have. Because if you can get rid of and turn off all of those programs and see the true person that God made you to be, I mean, this is what I love telling the kids, is they just don't realize how powerful they are. And they don't have so many programs running like we do. So if I can get to them earlier and sooner and turn those programs off sooner, they're going to do amazing things. They're going to be just awesome at the stuff that they do because they know how to handle these things. We're going to be constantly thrown all of this stuff. And you can't get out of it. And we're throwing it often because we need to be taught a lesson, right? And sometimes God will teach us lessons the hard way because we are stubborn people. So why not have a tool to help yourself process that?
Is it fair to say this is a process of kenosis?
That would mean I need to know what
Kenosis,
kenosis is.
It's an emptying out. I think of, I'm trying to think of the place in the Bible where it speaks most easily about kenosis.
Like Gnostic, like Gnostic?
No, K-E-N.
K-E-N, okay.
I mean, it's when you're clearing yourself out and just the process of closing your eyes and breathing in and feeling your emotions, where do you feel them in your body? That's a huge part of just understanding and processing all of this stuff because we don't quiet ourselves down enough. You know, it's like the idea of, right, prayer is you talking to God, but meditating is listening to God. And we don't often give ourselves that quietness to meditate, to listen to God. He talks to us, but we're just so busy yapping away at ourselves and running all these little programs that we don't hear us. He gives us the answers. It's like having an open book test, but we don't open the book.
Well, it's that we do, back to the kenosis kind of concept, we do piling on. And we pile on, and it's the aging process. That's what's so god awful about the aging process. Is you keep piling on without unloading anything.
Yeah.
And if you don't get things unloaded, you can't be operating at your peak performance. The older you get, and that, I'm sure that's one of the kids' problems is if you can forget about some of the junk down here, it's not going to be bothering you when you're 80 years old.
Right. Yep. There's a lot of truth to that. And you know, the onion scenario of feeling it, or if you've ever like had to take wallpaper off a wall and somebody has several layers of wallpaper, and sometimes you get that really good piece, right? And you can pull instead of all these like little pieces. Tapping will work that way. There's some times where you can get one really good piece and a ton comes off all at once like that. It's not always this painful process of, oh, I got to do this little thing and then I have to tap on that little thing. Sometimes you get one thing and it knocks all of it down. So there's different aspects to things. So if or even if you look at a table with several different legs, if you knock the right leg down, that whole table can fall over. So if your issue is what's sitting on the table and the legs are all the different parts of what's holding that issue up, maybe you knock down one and the table's still standing, but you've knocked down 2 or 3, but there's 8, legs all together, the whole table falls. You don't even have to deal with those other ones. So that's why this is so great for veterans and post-traumatic stress, because they often can just tap on a couple of things and all of this other stuff just goes away. And they haven't quite figured out how that happens, but it does.
I will just state that I have used this technique at home and I have found it very useful. I have tried many things since my college days. I've tried meditation, mindfulness, biofeedback, and I've tried this. And I found this is more effective than anything else I've tried. I must say that most of the time I'm just tapping without going through any thought process. Personally, I find just the tapping to bring my stress level down. Maybe less than 20% of the time am I doing any special thought sequence when I'm doing it. But when I have used it when I have been extremely stressed out, like when I have an interview coming up or a big presentation to somebody in my company, and I go through the thought process as well, it has, significantly reduced my stress level. So I would strongly recommend it to anybody who wants to.
It reduces
use
it by, what it does is it calms the amygdala down. The amygdala is the part of your brain, it's that reptilian part of your brain that is the fight, flight, or freeze. And when that's functioning, the frontal cortex part of your brain that makes all the good decisions, that knows your presentation, that knows the answers to the interview questions, those two parts of the brain can't work at the same time. Because like it shows, well, you'll see if you ever watch that in the movie Heal, when you're in fight or flight, your body sends 100% of its energy to your limbs to get yourself out of a situation. So it literally drains your brain. It truly drains your brain of all of its blood and such so that you can get out of whatever it is you need to do. And your brain, the smart part, can't function and doesn't know better. So just by, even if you don't say the words and you just do the tapping part of it, it calms things down, it turns that amygdala off so that frontal part of your brain comes back down and starts functioning, and you're like, all right, I can think better, I can think a little clearer, and then you tell yourself, I should be calming down, and that part of your brain is working that knows you should be calming down, and it helps to bring everything down. 1 second.
Oh,
I learned this technique years ago from a healer, and also from the videos on the EFT website.
Yeah, there's great videos which are
The founder
found
did
thing.
that. But I'm just curious because the technique I learned in terms of the words thinking is very different. Where I will say, even though I have this problem, I love and accept myself deeply and completely. And then you just repeat the reminder phrase is just the problem, the problem,
Right.
the problem, the problem. And that works too.
It does. That's why this is called emotional freedom techniques with an S. There are several different ways. That is a way. There's also something that's called like tap and tell. So if you have a story, if you have a specific event that's like a 2-minute movie, like if you were to say of something, that happened, like maybe there's a car accident and you're afraid to drive and you remember specifically the collision that happened. You tell as if you're telling somebody the story and you tap on that. So there is your way, there is the way of not doing anything. That's why it's called techniques, because there are several different ways. This is a program. I mean, I went through over 40 some hours of training, and I still have a lot more to go in this. It goes deep.
one more biblical reference that
Just so you know, that for those of you who are going up to the 11, it's 11.
Something that came to me this week is, when you think, oh, I don't have this, I don't have enough of it, is you don't need no stinking yeast. Like, when God is like telling you what to do, you don't need yeast. You just go unleavened. You have it, you just go. And that, to me, that sort of fits in with this whole thing too.
Yeah, I can see that. Good question. Well, thank you all for
thank you.
coming. I appreciate it. Please come back next week for we're going to talk about clean eating, and going to talk specifically about like Paneras of your foods and why they sort of